everybody. Welcome to today's Science Dean Speaker Series. I'm really excited about our guest today, Professor Mike McKenney. He has been with GCU for more than 10 years, and we are so lucky to have him because he brings to GCU and to our community more than 25 years as a strength conditioning coach and a certified athletic trainer. So let's just jump right in, Professor
Wonderful.
McKenney. We have a bunch of questions for you today. And so we want to start with something I think a lot of the students would be interested in. What inspired you to go into sports medicine? And how did you find out about opportunities in your area of specialty?
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and start by saying that I am what I am by the grace of God. And divine intervention and God's calling and purpose in my life is what led me to the career field of sports medicine. I originally grew up in Michigan. And if you've seen the movie 8 Mile, that's pretty much my testimony. And then changed everything. So most individuals where I grew up didn't graduate high school, let alone go to college. So I didn't have a master plan and have it all figured out when I was 17. I actually just really liked playing football a lot. And football is what took me to college. And when I went to college, I had no idea what I was going to study. However, my best friend's parents worked in the healthcare field. And they treated me like one of their own also. That's kind of how it was in my neighborhood. And they thought, well, since you like sports and you're really good at working with people, maybe physical therapy would be something that you're interested in. So I did a couple observational experiences in physical therapy. And then when I got to college, I realized, well, they don't have a physical therapy program. And that's when I was introduced to athletic training. And the rest is history.
So how did you find out about opportunities in your area of specialty?
Yeah. So when you are a young student and you're trying to figure out what your purpose is, one of the most important things that you can consider is just getting as much experience as possible to observe and interact in different settings that you think you may be interested in. So that's what I did, is I started volunteering in the athletic training room as a freshman student at Albion College. And it was through those experiences and interactions with others that I was able to start to actually envision myself in those same shoes providing healthcare to athletes in a competitive environment. So when I talk to students about, how do you find your purpose? You don't find it really on the couch or only on the internet. You've got to put the human back in human resources and go and explore and find opportunities where you can either observe, volunteer, or participate at some level in a variety of settings to be able to start to actualize your future.
Thank you. That's fascinating. Do you have words of wisdom for students who are thinking about a career in sports medicine but haven't committed yet to that pathway?
So the sports medicine term is actually an umbrella term. It's an umbrella term which encompasses a variety of different specific disciplines, all with a central focus on promoting healthcare and optimizing performance in sports. So for example, some different sports professions can consist of physicians who are typically trained in sports-related injury, illness, prevention, and management. Other sports medicine professionals include athletic trainers. Athletic trainers are licensed healthcare professionals that are involved with the prevention, recognition, and management of sport-related injuries and illnesses in collaboration with physicians and other healthcare providers. Other members of the sports medicine team can include physical therapists, chiropractors. Here at GCU, we have an abundance of very, very talented nurse practitioners at our health center that help with our NCAA athletes, sports psychologists, and strength conditioning coaches. Those are all members of the primary care sports medicine team. And if you know that you love sports, competition, and you want to go into some field of medicine, I would encourage you to find ways in which you can observe, volunteer, or learn more about each of those respective disciplines. Now, one easy way to do that is to Google search it, right? And so you could look up, for example, the American Physical Therapy Association. And on that website, you'll find information that leads you to understanding what physical therapists who focus on sports-related injuries do. You can do the same through the National Athletic Trainers Foundation, the National Athletic Trainers Association website, which can show you, what athletic training is as a profession, And as you start to inform yourself about these various disciplines, you might find yourself leaning towards one more than the other. And when you do, find someone you can shadow. Find someone you can shadow. We all did it. None of us got here by climbing the ladder ourselves. We were all given a hand up, someone that gave us an opportunity at some point in our careers. And you just need to pursue those things so that you can identify which specialty within the sports medicine team you find yourself most likely to gravitate towards.
So this is a little off script, but you brought up a really good point about finding somebody you can shadow and having that mentor that helps you get to where you're going. How do you go about finding a mentor? Like, what do you say to them and how do you engage with them? Because that's a foreign concept for a lot of us, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that is one of the most common questions that students come to me with. And so I say, first, start with the network that you have. Find out if your parents have any friends who are in any of those respective disciplines. See if members of your church community might be a professional physical therapist or someone within that sports medicine umbrella. And then just ask. Very much so, most professionals, when the environment allows. So for example, I worked at a high performance training and rehabilitation center for the first 12 to 14 years of my career. Anytime a student called and asked, Mr. McKenney, can I come shadow you for a few days? I always said yes, because it's nice to get to meet young individuals that have a passion for what they want to do. And it often allowed us to vet people out and figure out, hey, I wonder if they'd be a good option as a physical therapy tech. Okay, so we did that for a number of reasons. And I can only think of maybe one or two cases where we ever had to say no. And maybe that was just because of schedule conflicts with other students who would be observing or shadowing at the time. Now that we've gotten a little bit out of COVID, I can tell you that most places are wide open to having shadowing experience as well, whether that's Banner Sports Medicine, Dignity, our athletic programs, or the high schools or community colleges in our community as well.
So it's as easy as walking in, introducing yourself and saying, I'm really interested in learning more about this. Can I watch you?
Yes. Simply put, putting the human back in human resources is far, far more productive than only sending an email. If you do send an email, that's not an inappropriate first step. Just make sure that you put your best foot forward and you present yourself as a young professional. So for example, if you were writing a letter to me because you wanted to observe in our Lopes Orthopedic Clinic where I treat patients, it would be best not to write an email that says, hey McKenney, can I come hang with you? I know that that sounds maybe oversimplified and a little funny, but sometimes those are the emails that if we receive them, they do get dismissed. However, if the email says, good afternoon, Mr. McKenney, my name is so-and-so. I'm a junior at Grand Canyon University studying exercise science, and I'm really interested in learning more about the career path of athletic training. I'm wondering if there's an option to shadow you. I'm already thinking, well, when are you available? Okay, you had me at hello. And so presenting yourself appropriately with a professional disposition through your written discourse, if you choose to lead with that, that is a very appropriate first step to consider. Now, there's been other times where students pretty much do just show up at the clinic, knock on the door. Is there someone I can talk to here about shadowing? If you do that, you want to just dress appropriately, right? Shakespeare was once quoted as saying, the clothes doth proclaim the man. Man being a gender neutral term in that sense, right? So the man or woman, but how you present yourself, that first impression can sometimes either open the door or close the door on your behalf.
Thank you. That was really helpful, I think, because I know when I was starting out, those were the kinds of things. It was very intimidating. Just the idea of how do I approach somebody and ask for help and what do I do next? And I know that for our GCU students, our faculty are also always available to help you answer those questions and make those introductions. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to them, including Professor McKenney. So for students that are already on the path towards a sports medicine career of some sort, is there anything you can share with them to help them move forward?
Yeah, I think in this day and age, some of the things that I've learned from our partners So when I speak of our partners, I think of the preceptors and clinical sites that partner with GCU to provide student clinical experiences outside of here. One of the most common threads that they're saying now that I'm hearing over and over is you want to separate yourself from the masses with some type of credentialing. So for those of you that might be interested in being a strength conditioning coach as a member of the sports medicine team, it is crucial for you to get credentials prior to graduation. Some of those credentials could be a corrective exercise specialist. I know that you guys have a course on that. A performance enhancement specialist. You should all, at least without a doubt, seek to obtain your CPT prior to graduation if you can, and definitely your CSCS immediately upon graduation. Those credentials are really what begin to separate you from other individuals who may have gone through an exercise science program. The other thing with that too is those observational experiences. As the more experiences you have, the more of a story that you'll be able to tell potential employers, potential future opportunists when you seek them out.
That's helpful. Thank you. What do you think are going to be some of the biggest obstacles to entering the profession? On the other side of that, what are the challenges that these students need to be prepared for?
Yeah, so before I jump to that, I do want to just go right back to that previous question. I know I only focused on strength conditioning. However, something that I think is very valuable is working as an EMT. That's a pretty easy certification many of you could get. It allows you to get hands-on patient experience, and as a college student, you can make some money. We have students in our program that work as EMTs on the weekend. The team physician who I work with at the X Games, he worked as an EMT for years before he went on to medical school and became an ER physician. So however you want to pursue, it's a great entry-level opportunity for young students that provides a certification, hands-on learning experience, and money. Yeah.
That's good to know.
Challenges?
Would it be okay? Yes, challenges, please.
Let's go back to those challenges.
Let's go back to those challenges because we want to be prepared, right?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges that can hinder students that I've known over the last 15 years or so as a educator at the university level is just starting with the notion that you do not have to have the rest of your life figured out today. Okay? Let me say that again. You do not have to have the next 20 years of your life figured out today. Because the little secret is, none of us had our lives figured out when we were your age. The calling on your life from God is just to be faithful with each and every day with the knowledge and the equipping and the giftedness that He's given you, right? And if you're faithful with each and every day, and not to say that planning isn't important, but with appropriate planning and guidance, you'll find your purpose and you'll move toward the things that God's called you to do and to become. So you don't have to have it all figured out. I think that's the biggest challenge because it hinders students from just taking one step. You know, you don't have to eat the entire elephant all at once. Just eat it one bite at a time. Take one step each day. Another challenge that I think is important to overcome is to learn how to be a learner. Most of the members of the sports medicine team that I described to you, the athletic trainer, the physical therapist, the team physician, the sports psych, the nutritionalist, the chiropractor, etc., they all have advanced knowledge and degrees. So one of the most important things you can do as a learner here at GCU is to learn how you learn and learn how you learn effectively so that when you do go on to that graduate coursework, you are well prepared because at that point, it's like drinking out of a fire hose. There's so much knowledge and information coming at you. You need to be able to efficiently and effectively retain it, apply it, and think through it as a healthcare provider. Okay, so learn how to be a learner. And the last thing there is I want to recommend is just developing the self-discipline and commitment to learn from every class. I know that was a challenge for myself, is to see the purpose in everything. And that's actually a principle of adult learning. And you're all adult learners. You have to just find out how and why, even in the classes that may not interest you the most, that's important. Because oftentimes your foundational coursework to prepare you for a profession is really wide and shallow, and it's not until you begin practicing that you start to go really deep and narrow focused. So you've got to learn to embrace the stuff that isn't so fancy and not as interesting, because it's all important and you can trust the process in that.
I really appreciate several of the things that you said. You were talking about the importance of approaching a task, approaching a new challenge, and doing it one step at a time. Research today is showing that part of why we procrastinate is because of this fear of failure, that if we try, we're going to fail. But we don't need to set ourselves up to meet that big goal today. We need to set ourselves up to meet this smaller step. And as we climb those steps, we're going to get to, well, we're going to eat the whole elephant, as you said.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that, because I think that's something that all of us are programmed to think about, that I've got to be reaching for this top goal right at the start. And I would echo what you say. I'm in a different field than you. I'm a neuroscientist, but at 22, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just hoping to have a job when I graduated or have something to do next. And that was okay, because I had that next step and I didn't have to figure things out. So that when I changed my mind 2 years later, and then again 2 years after that, I still ended up okay, right? It doesn't matter where you start. It's just that you keep going. And I think that's the message that you gave that I really appreciate.
Yeah, that was the final point that I didn't share, which, no, you did so eloquently. I appreciate it, because it just says accepting defeat is divine intervention. You should know that every single one of your professors who's gone through a doctoral program has had to embrace defeat as opportunity, because it is an iterative process of constant refinement, constant refinement, constant refinement. And we've all gone through it. And so we don't see defeat as failure. We see it as oftentimes divine intervention. And how can you see that as, rather than, oh, I failed at this task, I think the question that you can reframe that with appropriately is, Lord, what are you trying to teach me with? What are you trying to teach me? How can I respond to this in the most God-glorifying way to benefit the most from it? And if you gain that perspective, that's what keeps you going.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, because that's the whole goal, right? If we stop, then we're not going to get anywhere. And defeat isn't the end of the road. It's the start of a new path. And it might be the path that we were intended to be on. Yes. So thank you. So thinking about these paths and these goals, how do you set goals for yourself? And how do you celebrate the small achievements, the personal achievements, while working towards those bigger goals? Because I think a lot of us forget, and I will start with myself. I forget to celebrate the small stuff because I'm looking at the end goal and saying I'm nowhere near where I want it to be. Yeah. So how do you set goals? How do you hold yourself accountable? How do you celebrate the meaningful moments?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking that. I'm going to go ahead and respond to that by telling you a story about my life. Many years ago, as a young athletic trainer, I began to find a fond affection for the Olympic movement. And the Olympic movement is essentially all of the Olympic sports that Olympians compete in around the globe. And I knew that at some point in my career, I wanted to pursue that level of being a high-performance sports healthcare provider. And so in about 2010, I decided to go back, step one. Step one was to go and get my EMT certification. And I had already been a licensed athletic trainer for a dozen years. However, I worked in a high-performance training and conditioning center. And so my day-to-day tasks were, I was a strength and conditioning coach for NFL athletes, Major League Baseball athletes, and those aspiring to those levels. And then also as an athletic rehabilitation therapist with many of those similar athletes. I wasn't really in the day-to-day grind of acute care. So I went back, I got my EMT certification. I didn't know exactly where it was going to take me. Looking back, I can tell you exactly where it took me. It took me to the world of action sports, because a physician assistant who was part of my sports medicine team reached out and said, hey, you just did your EMT training, huh? And you're an AT? Hey, I got a group of individuals I want to introduce you to. And it was at that time he introduced me to Rob Blackaby of Medicine in Motion. Well, Rob Lackaby has had the contract with the X Games for the last 15 or so years, providing sports healthcare to them. And I started off with the Arizona High Mountain Bike League, et cetera. And that began to introduce me to action sports. A few years later, I decided I wanted to take my first step. So I set a goal. Okay, my first goal is I want to follow the Olympic provider pathway. So for those of you that don't know, the Olympic provider pathway is simply this. You first go and do a rotation at one of our 3 Olympic training centers. And you go and you volunteer a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks of your time based on your availability. And you go and you just work as an athletic trainer there, as a volunteer during their fellowship program. So I signed up for that. And of all of the time slots that I was available for because of my schedule, there was only one. And it was a 3-week rotation. And I thought, wow, I do not want to go for 3 weeks. I just wanted to do a week. But it was a goal of mine. And my wife looked at me and said, this has been a goal of yours for a while, go. So that was step one, I went. Then the next goal is, if things go well while you're there, which it did for me, based on athlete feedback, other clinicians, et cetera, then they invite you back to what's called a national event. So that's goal 2. Okay. Then they invited me back to work a USA BMX national race at the Olympic Training Center. So I went back, I worked that, and after that, the next goal was an international event. And I didn't know how or with whom, but again, I had this EMT certification that I went and got. I had been volunteering and working in action sports. I was introduced to that sport over at the Olympic Training Center in Chula Vista. So that led me to an invite to go to Medellin, Colombia in 2017 with the team. 2015 with the team as their team sports performance provider. And so the next step then is the Olympics, right? And that is still a goal of mine. However, in 2016, I was fast-tracked, and although I didn't go to the Olympics, I actually went as a high-performance healthcare provider with the United States Paralympic team in Rio de Janeiro, which follows the Olympics. And unknown to me at the time, it was one of the greatest experiences of my life as an athletic trainer, because I was around hundreds of incredible athletes who are some of the greatest overcomers of adversity I had ever known or met to that point in my life. And it inspired me to the next level, which is my aim of Paris 2024. So with each of those goals, every time it was achieved, there was a celebration. Celebrations can be dinner with my wife, a gift for her for supporting me in these adventures, but something where you actually make it a point to say, God, I thank you for the grace and the favor to have this experience, to meet these new people, to build these relationships, and to be able to continue doing that.
That's incredible. I'm kind of blown away here. I don't even know what to say next. But what are, I don't know if anyone else is curious at this point. This is just about me, right? What are the minimum requirements you have to be able to volunteer for that first level academy training? I'm sure someone else in here is curious, right?
Yeah. So as an athletic trainer, the minimum requirement is 3 years of athletic training experience. As a professional, yes. So as a professional, a minimum of 3 years experience, a preference for individuals with hands-on manual therapy skills, and availability. So those are the minimum qualifications. You need to be licensed, nationally certified, in good standing and such. And I believe you need professional liability insurance as well.
And so if you have all of those things, do you just go to a website and sign up to volunteer, or what does that look like?
Yeah, well, remember that conversation that we just had about putting yourself out there and talking to individuals, putting the human back in human resources?
So that was the key.
Yeah, so one of the events that I was working, which we'll see some pictures later, was a youth lacrosse event up in Denver, Colorado. And so I served as the athletic trainer for a club lacrosse team that my son played on. And while we were up there in Colorado, I met a young lady who worked at the Olympic Training Center, and I told her about my dreams and that I had this goal of always applying. It just wasn't the right time in my career. And she encouraged me, she said, Mike, please apply. Like, you should definitely apply. Well, little did I know, she's the director of the internship program. And just being there, having that experience and talking to other individuals while I was there really got the ball rolling. But yes, you can go on the website and apply for it.
Okay, well, it sounds like I don't know what I'm doing. Clearly, that's why we're here today, and they're letting me ask the question because I know less than anyone else in the room. I'd love to hear more about your views on the nature of sports medicine as a profession and as a service industry today. We describe so many different professions. I would describe being a college professor as a service industry profession. Where do you fall into that? How do you see it with sports medicine specifically?
Yeah, well, I think that all facets of sports medicine and healthcare are service oriented. As athletic trainers specifically, we often find ourselves serving at the feet of those we care for. Ankle sprains, for example, are the most common injury in National Federation of High School Sports and NCAA. So there's no pun intended with that being at the feet of our patients. However, healthcare emphasizes a patient-centered approach, which requires an individual to not only value their patient's beliefs and preferences, but you have to first listen to them and ask important questions, demonstrate empathetic listening, and not just ask the questions, but listen and then act on those. So all of those are acts of service. You know, considering others is more important than yourselves and recognizing what is their chief complaint and what is their chief goal? What do they want to obtain from this relationship and this interaction? What service can I offer them to help them get to the place where they want to go? And so whether you're the team physician, the physical therapist, athletic trainer, strength coach, it all involves a lot of human interaction, which requires effective communication, active listening, and empathetic professional dispositions.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit more about who these populations that we serve in these professions would be, whether it's individuals or groups? You mentioned high school sports associations, but who else? For instance, if you're just starting out as an athletic trainer.
Yeah. So athletic trainers and members of the sports medicine team can all work with individuals across the lifespan in various populations. So for example, I actually care for youth sports and individuals that compete who are over 50 years old. So I really oversee a large portion of the lifespan with that. But typically sports medicine professionals at large, one of the largest sites of employment is high schools throughout the United States and colleges. Particularly with high schools, the demographic there is anywhere between ages of 13 and 18. Okay, so 13 and 18 is the primary demographic. Colleges, it's 18 to 22. Professional sports can then go on depending upon how long someone's career is. And then there's even amateur competitive sports. So for example, in the sport of BMX, we have individuals that I take care of with our USA team that are 5 years old all the way to 55 years old. And so partnering with your team physicians and other healthcare providers who have expertise in those specific populations is really valuable in that patient-centered approach as a sports medicine provider.
So it sounds to me like you need to be prepared coming out of your degree programs to be able to serve a large variety of populations. What happens though if you want to serve one very specific group? Are you able early on to start moving in that direction, or do you start by getting experience with everybody before you get to move forward towards specializing, for instance, with action sports or with professional baseball or whatever your favorite may be?
Yeah, that's a common question that students bring my way. And my response to that is yes. You can go both ways with that. Now, sports specialization, let me give you some examples in sports medicine. For example, working in baseball, more than half of the Major League Baseball teams are located here in the Valley. So there's a lot of opportunities for students. In fact, I have students right now at the Dodgers and at the Brewers doing clinical rotations. In those specific locations, there's a real emphasis and specialty in upper extremity injuries. Shoulder injuries are the most common injury in baseball, and then second is elbows. So they don't see a lot of the injuries that, say, our students do who are here working with men's and women's soccer, per se. But going back to that question of how do you pursue that specific training for a focus within sports medicine, it's typically done when you're young because of the demands of those sports. Not always, but when you're young, perhaps unencumbered by other requirements and responsibilities in your life, such as maybe a spouse or children or other things, then you can really pursue hard a lot of that specialized training with individual or specific sports.
Thank you. That's helpful. I'm going to change tracks a little bit. We're at GCU, and I would say one of my favorite things about being a part of the Grand Canyon community is the way that we all collectively and individually see service as a big part of our daily lives. And within all of our professions, there are many opportunities that exist to give back to our communities. What are some of those opportunities in sports medicine?
Yeah. So I think one of the most common experiences give back in sports medicine, probably looking around, most of you may have participated in. And I would say that doctors, nurses, PAs, athletic trainers who volunteer for pre-participation physicals at the high school level, that's a very common one, because the purpose of a pre-participation physical exam is to identify individuals at risk prior to participation. And so doctors in communities often will volunteer their time to be able to share their expertise and collaborate with other members of the sports medicine team to ensure the safety of individuals before they even get to participate. Other ways that you can volunteer would be, say, through the U.S. Olympic Committee volunteer program. High schools have volunteer programs oftentimes, especially in rural, underserved areas, where maybe the goal for them isn't to have an athletic trainer on site, although they'd love to have one. They're trying to save enough money to get a math teacher, so to speak. So volunteering there. I can confess to some extent that I've done that for the last 4 years at Arizona Lutheran Academy, where my kids go to school. I've been so thankful for God's provision with their ability to attend school there that I pretty much volunteer as the school's athletic trainer and help manage a lot of injuries as part of the sports medicine team, though. I don't do that alone. I do that in conjunction with our strength conditioning coach at the school. He's a member of my primary care sports medicine team for sure. I couldn't do it without him. He even does a lot of the taping and preventative things for student athletes after school. Then I also collaborate with Dr. Steven Erickson and the other fellows over at Banner Sports Medicine. I could not do it without his direction and guidance and expertise in sport-related injuries. So that's another way to volunteer and give back within the field of sports medicine.
Well, listening to you talk, it sounds to me like within the profession itself, there are so many opportunities that exist for giving back and serving and doing good for others. And I assume that that's something that's appealing to you and to our students that are interested in this path. Is that true? Was that something that was on your mind? I know I'm totally going off script here, but...
No, but you're absolutely right. And to whom much is given, much is required, right? And specifically, one of the areas that I didn't even tap into would be professional volunteering. And I'm inspired every day by the men that I work with, Dr. Mesman, Brandon Warner, Mark Eilers. These guys volunteer so much of their time to our professional organization, the Arizona Athletic Trainers. In fact, Dr. Mesman is the president and has been for a while. And everyone else who participates and volunteers there, it's really inspiring to see individuals giving of their time to make the profession better than the way that they found it for you. They do it for you, the next generation of sports medicine professionals. And I'm proud to say that I spent 5 years as a professional education committee chair here in Arizona, leading and directing our professional education and continuing education for the 700 plus athletic trainers in the state. But more recently, I was part of a group, a governmental affairs committee, an ad hoc committee that really pushed to add a particular technique to our licensure, to our practice act in athletic training. That's the technique of dry needling. So for those of you that aren't aware of dry needling, it's similar to acupuncture and using a monofilament needle, except the paradigm and the way in which you approach the evaluation and the treatment outcome expectations is different from that of Eastern medicine. It's more of a Western approach. Having been trained in that, but not being able to use it here in the state, I recognize how many people weren't receiving the benefit of this across the state, all types of competitive athletes. And so, you know, I was part of a group that volunteered, and it took us a while. It took us a while to get it through the House Health Committee and approved by the governor. But now I'm really proud to say that through those efforts, that's been now added to the Arizona athletic training Licensure Practice Act. And so future athletic trainers in this room or online will actually be able to be trained in that and provide that as a benefit to the public good, just through some volunteer work.
As an aside, because I saw some heads nodding as you were talking about dry needling, if students want to get trained in that technique to be certified here in the state, how do they go about doing that?
Well, it starts with your ground certifications, such as you need to be a healthcare provider to be able to even take the course. So you'd have to be a licensed physical therapist, athletic trainer, chiropractor, DO, MD, or physician assistant, or nurse practitioner. Yeah, so it starts with that. And then you would receive what's called ongoing professional development. And there's a lot of different things that you can pursue through your career. You can pursue courses in things like osteoporotic manipulation, dry needling. Just 2 years ago, academics, athletics, and sports performance all came together to learn how to use blood flow restriction therapy collectively as sports medicine providers for the benefit of our athletes here and patients at our orthopedic clinic. So the neat thing about sports medicine for me is that the learning just begins once you start practicing. And as you think about how you can prepare yourself successfully for a profession or a career in sports medicine, is enjoying learning in the process and envisioning yourself as a lifelong learner. Envisioning yourself as a lifelong learner, because no 2 days are the same, no two patients are the same. And again, that's what's really fun and exciting about it and keeps you going 25 years later.
And I think that's been a theme throughout our conversation today, is that you keep going back to, and then I learned how to do this, or then I acquired this certification, and that's, I feel the same way, that it's the learning, all the things out there that I don't know now that I have this special degree. And so I can keep learning and I can keep growing, and with each level of new information, I can do more to serve others. And that's really exciting. I'm guessing that that's where the heart of this comes from, is how do I serve more? How do I serve better? And this career that you all are looking at going into, it sounds like it's full of those opportunities to give you a lot of personal and professional satisfaction throughout your career.
Yeah, it sure does. And when you think of your education here at GCU, in addition to gaining as many certifications as you can, I like to use this illustration. The education and the knowledge that you're receiving now, okay, the investment in yourself that you're making is foundational. Like all of these buildings we see going up around Grand Construction University, if there is not a strong, deep, solid foundation, when they start putting the walls up and the roofs on and the winds blow, that could be a real problem, right? So what you're learning in your kinesiology class, your exercise phys, your strength conditioning, corrective exercise, all of those courses is absolutely foundational to the advanced knowledge courses that you take as a professional. For example, if you don't understand the stretch reflex, then when you go to take a course in plyometrics, that can be really difficult and challenging. If you don't know your anatomy, you're behind the ball, even in your professional programs. Regardless of the discipline, one of the things that I like to remind students is that technology changes, instruments change, even some of our techniques and interventions, therapeutic interventions, they all change. You know what doesn't? Anatomy. It doesn't change. MRIs can change and get better, but anatomy doesn't. So making sure that you invest in your foundation and don't skip over it to get to the fancy stuff, I think is a very important reminder for students at this level.
That's really helpful. Thank you. So changing gears again, how did the pandemic affect your profession and your personal life, if you want to share that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start with our profession. I think athletic trainers found themselves to be flexible and adaptable. Flexible and adaptable. I think that's a really important character quality of all sports medicine professionals, is to be flexible and adaptable, because there's things that come your way that you can't control. Institutional or organizational policies that can affect some of your clinical decisions. That can lead to what's called moral distress. And if moral distress isn't dealt with, then that spirals into things like burnout and leaving professions. So personally, what I found from COVID was a lot of extra time to manage stress. And so I spent a lot of time on my mountain bike. I spent a lot of time working out, doing other things, because the times were so stressful for all of us. As faculty members, as professionals, many people's, their livelihoods were literally being economically upended. Yeah, so managing that stress is a key. This is the time in your life to learn how to manage stress. This is a very, very important time in your life. If you choose to go on to graduate school, that is a hallmark question. If you're sitting here and you want to go to PT school, one of the questions they're going to ask you is, how do you handle stress? Because we're going to load it on and we're going to tighten down the screws. And we need to make sure that you're resilient, that you can persevere, because we want those who start this program to finish. And keep in mind, stress just makes you stronger. Sometimes you got to lean into it. Sometimes you got to take a break. But you've got to find out what works for you to manage stress so that you can go on and do that. So I resorted back to that a little bit during and after the pandemic.
Well, and it's interesting. I was going to make a joke about a pint of Haagen-Dazs ice cream right now, but I didn't, because during the pandemic, I found myself working at home and sitting in front of a computer all day long. And all of a sudden, I developed an exercise routine. I was walking 3 to 4 miles a day. My dogs became muscular instead of these cute little couch potatoes with bellies. And, you know, because it was just it felt good. I could still have the Haagen-Dazs, but I walked first, yes. Right? But you highlighted something that I think is really important for students to recognize, and you would have heard about it, I think, in your earlier classes. I know with Dr. Semenoff, because she talks about developing an exercise plan and healthy eating and coping with organizational and stress management, right? Those things are what will help you succeed as you get to those next levels and you're taking on more and more responsibilities. Maybe then you don't need the Haagen-Dazs. I don't know. I would say always get the Haagen-Dazs, but you know. If you could give advice that we haven't already talked about to your undergraduate self, what would it be? Is there any leaf we've left unturned?
I think the first piece of advice that came to my mind when I considered this question was always be humble and kind. Always be humble and kind. I say that out of a foundational knowledge of what God expects from me. In Isaiah 66:2, it reads, "This is the one to whom I will look, he who is humble and contrite in spirit and who trembles at my word." Jesus followed that up with, "Whoever humbles himself will be exalted, and whoever exalts himself will be humbled." And so, as I mentioned earlier, all of us who have been in pretty much any profession for an extended period of time have been given a hand up by others, have been given opportunities by others. And it's been remarkable to see how often it comes around where you circle back with someone that you may have met younger, or someone that you reached out to and now they're helping you in some way or fashion that is beneficial. So always be humble and kind, remain a willing learner. It is a dangerous place if I'm the smartest person in the room. I do my absolute best to build a team of superstars around me. I do not want to be the most talented person on part of the sports medicine team. I'm okay with my role. I know what my role is. I try to bring people together, be a willing learner, and empower other people's knowledge, skills, and giftedness to do what they do best. And then lastly, I think it's just always try to place a professional disposition on inappropriate settings. As I mentioned earlier, a little bit about my background. You know, if you've seen the movie 8 Mile, it's the trailer park, the single mom, the rap music, all of it. I was really unpolished when I was your age, and I had some wonderful patient mentors in my life that helped me to understand the benefit and the merit of that professional disposition to create opportunities and an environment to provide that service to others that's of benefit to them and brings me great joy as well. So those are my advices to a younger me.
Thank you. That is a wonderful way to end our question segment, because I would say what I have found of you consistently in the years that we've known each other and worked together is that you are always looking for ways to give back. Now that you have an established career, a wonderful family life, and you're able to do the things that you love every day as a profession, you seek now to better others and build others. And that's so important. I think that we, as educators, I think we're all there, but it sounds like it's also a common theme in sports medicine, and I really appreciate that. So I am guessing that there are students in here that may have questions for Professor McKenney. So if you will put your hand up, I'll come around with the mic. Oh, I can stay right here. Okay.
We would love your questions.
Okay.
Yes, we will.
Sure.
Okay. Going back to when we were talking about specializations, you mentioned that it would be easier like in the life to do it when you're younger, when you don't have so many responsibilities. Would you say that you recommend going into a specific specialization over going into something that you're going to get a broader experience in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question was, do you recommend going into a specialty or not? I think it depends on what type of member of the sports medicine team you aspire to be. For example, whether you guys recognize this or not, the United States healthcare system is a procedurally based healthcare economy. And so many people at higher levels, such as physicians, they'll pursue specialties because those specialties are reimbursed at a very, very high level in those disciplines, such as surgeries and such. However, in sports medicine, specifically as an athletic trainer, if you begin to specialize, athletic trainers typically work with a physically active portion of the population. So that's already a narrowed consumer base that you have. And then if you only focus with a specific type of athlete or specific specialty, then it narrows that even further. So depending upon your geography and where you live, that can dictate that as well. In large urban areas, such as the Phoenix area or LA or Vegas or something, there's typically a large enough population to serve specialties. In smaller rural communities, being a jack of all trades, master of none is probably a more advantageous career position to be in because you don't then squeeze the pipeline of your potential consumers so much.
Other questions?
So when going into like finishing out your bachelor's degree, would you suggest taking a gap year? Because I know that some, like for me, like some going into PT, some kind of suggest it and others don't. So do you think it'd be better to like get an internship after your bachelor's or to just go into your master's?
Yeah, so if you guys didn't hear the question, it's do you recommend a gap year if you're trying to go to PT school? My recommendation based on 25 years of experience in working in a PT clinic is this. With the rising costs of education, particularly in professional schools such as physical therapy, my advice would be to get in as soon as you can. And the reason for that is simply this. The sooner you can start making money, the less you're borrowing, right? And if you're able to work that year in between, it's helpful, but it doesn't really matter if you start your career at 26, 27, or 28. By the time you're 30, it really doesn't matter. But minimizing debt is probably a really appropriate strategy because of the costs with that. And so the other thing is, if you get in right out of undergrad, then you just reduce that delay that could potentially be there the next year because you don't know who the other applicants are, so to speak. But it is a personal question. I think it's an important question to ask with people that are close to you, family, friends, even yourself, just being honest with yourself, prayerfully considering it, and just saying, hey, do I need a year off? And if you feel like you do, then take a year and go in that next year. I think the average age for physical therapy school is somewhere around 24 years old. For PA, it's even a little bit older. The advantage there is both of those professional schools want you to finish what you start. That is, if they open the door and let you in to be one of the 50 in that cohort, they just want to ensure that you'll finish. And sometimes having those 2 or 3 years of working experience prior to really fortifies your desire and your commitment to pursuing that. And that just tells them you're going to finish what you started. The other thing that it allows you to do is if you're even wavering or on the fence, I've seen both. I've had students work as PT techs with us for a year, as that gap year you just described. Half of them have confirmed, yes, PT is exactly what I want to do. The other half, this isn't what I wanted to do, even though I thought it was. And they went on to other healthcare professions, such as nursing or something like that. So it can be very beneficial to do the gap year, but I think it's a personal decision that each individual needs to take on a case-by-case basis. Talking with your faculty, talking with your friends and those that are in your circle of love, if you will, that can be very helpful to walk through that.
Circle of love. I like that. Yeah. Other questions?
Wait, so you kind of talked about it, but like for me, I want to go into like athletic training in the professional sport area. So if you didn't know people, how would you go about that as to getting like the step in the door?
Okay. So in professional sports, that's pretty broad, right? A lot of different professional sports. And in fact, our athletic training program has affiliation agreements and partnerships with many of them. The Phoenix Rising, the Arizona Rattlers, the Milwaukee Brewers, there's quite a few, right? So that's one stepping stone because we've had students, your peers, your friends from GCU, who've gotten jobs with those organizations through their internships or what we call their clinical experiences. So that's one way. Now, professional organizations such as football, they have the Professional Football Athletic Trainers Association. It's PFATS for short. And on their website, they actually have internship applications. Jessica Reed, one of our former students here at GCU, after completing her graduate work over in Texas, she came back, she applied for it, and she's been the intern with the Arizona Cardinals for the last 2 years. Yeah, so that's an example of one. The Phoenix Mercury, I just got off the phone with Hannah over there. She's their PT-AT. She's looking for interns, post-grad. So a lot of it is just through the professional organization websites. PBATS is the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainers Association. That's the other one, and you can apply for one of those internships there. Those internships are the pathway to a professional opportunity. So those internships are usually paid. They're usually in lower levels of the organization, but it gives them an opportunity to work alongside you, to see your professional dispositions, whether or not you're a good fit for the organization, you fit the culture and the mindset. And they often lead to opportunities when they arise, if not with them, with others, with other organizations as well. So you start with those different types.
Well, and I'll just add, I work very closely with the exercise science faculty here at GCU, and I can tell you that they are very well connected with a lot of these organizations. So if you're in a class, for instance, with Dr. Semenoff or Dr. Havener or any of our faculty in the exercise sciences, and you reach out to them and say, I'm interested in interning in this area, I can see Dr. Havener just nodding his head like, yes, I've been working on building these programs for our students. Reach out to your faculty. They are a wonderful resource for helping you get started. This is their passion, is helping you get to where you want to get to.
Absolutely. And as a member of the Science Advisory Committee, I can tell you that I've been in rooms like this with all these professionals from professional sports like you were just describing. And one of the resounding themes a few years ago was students need to have an internship. Students need to have an internship. And from what I understand, you guys built that into the curriculum and you built the partnerships. So the pathway is there for those of you that would desire that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that part. But absolutely, the pathway is there for every single one of you. But you have to take that first step. You have to ask for help. You have to approach your faculty member because we can't read your mind. We haven't figured out how to read your minds yet.
Yeah.
We're working on it, but we haven't figured it out yet.
And the fact that this recommendation came from all these professionals in the community, they want you there. They want you guys there. They want to have interns and they want to get to know this next generation of potential professionals that they might be able to embrace as part of their sports medicine team.
Do we need to wrap up? Okay. Well, I guess Dr. Havenar has a question or a statement.
Thanks, Mike. So people that might not want to go into AT, all the years, great professional, even better person. What are some of the things that really stand out to you? One, if they're sitting down in front of you in an interview, or when they start their work, they've gotten past that, now they're doing it. Because I've heard from a lot of them, it's just like, I'm really scared to like just start. I don't know how, what skills should I work on. Any advice for these guys on that?
Yeah, are you referring to now or once they graduate and move beyond?
Now, like how should they, like you talked about the email.
Yeah.
But if they go to approach and they get an opportunity, it's just like, what are you looking for when you sit and talk to them, whether it's beyond content?
Yeah.
Beyond content.
Absolutely. Some of the largest employers of athletic trainers across the country have said one of the most important things that they're looking for in young professionals, so that's you, is effective communicators with either patients, other providers, or sometimes a parent if you're dealing with a youth. So if you do get those experiences, your approach towards communication with the professionals there, maybe even the patients, if you're observing at a PT clinic or if you're doing a volunteer rotation, say with GCU, NCAA athletics, how you relate to the patients and the effort that you make there is crucial. For example, if on day one you spend more time looking at a phone than you do looking into other people's eyes and being attentive listeners, then that's automatically going to be a strike against you, so to speak. And we know it's a distraction, right? These phones, they're meant to be addictive and grab all of our attention. But having that professional disposition to put that away, to be actively engaged with sometimes the providers, sometimes the patients or the other people in that particular arena is really it's a distinct mark of young professionals this day that people are looking for to give opportunities to for employment and beyond. Yeah, I think that's a real key.
And I think that's great advice for any young professional going into any field today. It applies across the board that effective communication, the willingness and ability to be present will set you apart from your counterparts, right? And I think we're out of time, so that's a great way to end this talk. I really want to thank everybody for your active participation today, and especially you, Professor McKenney. It has been not just a treat to hang out with you for the last hour, but it has been really enlightening to learn more about your profession. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for joining. So for those of you that are here, So for those of you that are here in person and maybe online, I put together a little slideshow demonstrating a variety of the experiences as an athletic trainer that I've been able to participate in as a sports medicine provider. So I've worked the ESPN X Games, both winter and summer, combined for the last 8 years or so. I've worked with the disciplines of BMX, moto, snowboard, ski, pretty exciting. I was able to participate in the Rio Paralympic Games as well as the Olympic trials. Down here on the left, this is service to the community, the raffle at the Arizona Cardinals. I've participated in that to help raise funds for athletic trainers. You can see we've progressed from BMX to moto here. Yes, I'm responsible for that, but not solely. I stand next to an ER physician and an ALS medic. You can see some of the people I've got to meet. This is Steve. He's the bugler for the Kentucky Derby the last 20 plus years running. And these are a number of our students that Mr. Graff, one of our preceptors, and I were able to partner with at a recent high school cross-country meet. So again, just working outdoors in a variety of settings. Students often ask me, Mr. McKenney, how did you know you wanted to be an athletic trainer? My simple response is this: just didn't want to be confined to four walls. And so by showing you that picture and some of the different things that I've been privileged to do, youth sports with my kids. These are some other faculty members here that I partner with. This is working as a provider in Medellin, Colombia. It's taken me all around the world, and I never ever would have dreamed that when I first started. But it starts with your foundation, right? It starts with exercise science, anatomy, physiology, the foundational principles that then you can build upon and scaffold your knowledge so that you can have some adventures. Up top here on the left, I also worked as an AT spotter for the NFL for 5 years here at the University of Phoenix, identifying injuries, working in rugby. Down on the left, that's GCU lacrosse. I help with the GCU lacrosse, GCU's golf team. Yeah, I did lacrosse for 5 years here as well. So you can see it's quite a variety. And this is my crowning achievement. I was the athletic trainer for my son's high school football team that won the state championship last year. And when people ask me, of all the things that you enjoyed throughout your career, is there a highlight? Without a doubt, last year, winning the high school state championship, having a captain on the team be my son, and the young men and the other coaches that I got to work with there as part of that team was definitely a highlight. So I wanted to make sure I put that in there. But then always finishing with GCU, right? This is what we're about. You expressed it very well. We know now, I'm so old, it's not about me anymore. It's about the next generation. And that's why this weekend at the USA BMX Winter Nationals, I'm going to have over 15 of my students out there doing the work, hands-on, with us just precepting them, because we want to give them the experiences and the opportunities to build their career now. So thank you guys for staying a little bit extra to see the photos there.
Well worth it, right?